I now call on Stuart Stevenson to wind up. Minister, you have 8 minutes.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Let me start, since Margaret Smith made reference to the Institute of Advanced Motorists, in drawing attention to my declaration of interest, which shows my membership of that organisation. I'm glad we've had the opportunity today to discuss this important issue. I'm heartened by the broad consensus that the levels of death through drink driving and injury are unacceptable. That has been a thread that has run through all the contributions that we've had today. We have seen that casualty numbers are moving in the right direction, with 45% fewer deaths and serious injuries in 2007 compared to the mid-90s, but there's much more to do. One death is one too many. Let me just address a few of the points that members have made as we've gone through. Richard Simpson was one of many members on the Labour benches who supported the change from 80. There were varying levels at which people wished to take it to. I think the key issue we have to consider is that when one has any amount of alcohol in one's system, there is a reduction in appropriate decision-making, a diminution in motor skills. Alcohol also reduces inhibitions and multiplies a range of other effects. Richard Baker said, "I think it would be better if there were a lower limit." He said that at 9:40. So I think Labour members have got the message. We just haven't got it in what's in front of us from them. Bill Aitken makes excellent points in relation to drug driving, and I noticed in contributions across the chamber that no one disagreed in any material sense with what Bill Aitken said, and I hope that there will be very substantial support for his amendment, albeit that it leaves us still with an amendment amended by Bill Aitken from the Labour Party that misses the point. It's been since 1998 quite clear. The Department of Transport in Westminster said that reducing the blood alcohol limit to 50 milligrams would save 50 deaths. It's time we expressed that view and ensured that Westminster takes account of that in a spirit of partnership, because the rest of GB would benefit as well. Richard Baker.
Richard Baker.
We of course welcome. Will the Minister not accept that from the government benches today we've heard arguments not just for a 50 milligram limit but for 3 different limits, and that makes the case for full consultation and what I'm calling for an evidence-based approach, and that surely the Department for Transport is looking for constructive engagement from the Scottish Government.
Minister.
On 3 previous occasions, Presiding Officer, we've seen policy positions taken at Westminster saying it should be changed to 50. Today we have question 11 in the consultation. What evidence are you able to offer? Well, that's not really behind a real change. It's simply asking for more evidence when already we've had 3 occasions when it has been suggested by the Labour administration at Westminster that we should see a reduction to 50. Bill Aitken also made reference to the Romberg's test, where people have to estimate how long 30 seconds is. I think a few members today, hopefully not all Liberals, should perhaps consider that one. Ross Finney drew out some of the things in the BMA note: slow reaction times, later braking when required, and overconfidence. Bill Butler, in intervening, said there was a considerable body of evidence. I think Dave Thompson, who's been on the case for a considerable time, said a great deal of sense when he talked about crash risks. Richard Simpson, too, delineated 3 groups of people who are at risk and focused on the borderline group, the people who are trying to drink but stay under the limit, as a particular area of difficulty. I think there's little doubt that if we reduce the limit, we make those people think much more carefully about the implications of drinking at all, and we should see, as has been seen right across Europe, a reduction in people's drinking. Dave Thompson also mentioned New Zealand and Australian evidence, which I think is very, very interesting. He makes the point too that technical measures can't simply solve the problem. You can get someone else to breathe into an in-car breathalyzer so that you can continue to drive. Alistair Allen talked about rural difficulties. He said we're not against drink and we're not against driving, we're against conjoining the two. And of course made reference to the very real effect that there is on families. Cathy Craigie, small minority offend, certainly true, but a disproportionate effect on families and safety across Scotland. She would go for zero, one or two others, my colleague Brian Adam similarly would do so. She called for more efforts by the Scottish and UK governments. We are prepared to step up to that challenge. I hope the UK government, as it goes forward, does similarly. Margaret Smith referred to the EU recommending 8 years ago the way forward and how most of the countries of Europe have responded to that. Aileen Campbell, more personal experience. Bill Butler welcomed the debate and said too that the numbers of drink deaths have remained broadly the same for about 10 years. If that is not an argument for doing something now, then we should do it. He also said, of course, 65 fewer deaths at 50 milligrams. Well, that's pretty strong evidence. Rob Gibson, cultural issues, in the Highlands in particular, but elsewhere as well. Robert Brown and John Lamont in closing. I thought John Lamont missed the target altogether. He said we should work with Westminster. Of course we shall do it. But he said equally, no evidence that lowering the limit will make a difference. I'm afraid we simply see things in a different way, and I think he's in a tiny minority, probably even from his other parts of his own party. Paul Martin suggested we can legislate our way out of this issue. Absolutely not. We have to change culture. We have to make sure that, in fact, we are setting in the limits that surround what happens on our roads, that we have appropriate limits. 50 milligrams is one that's working right across Europe. 50 milligrams is the level that we would wish to see. It would be a missed opportunity if today we do not accept Mr McCaskill's motion, which makes a clear reference to the 80 milligram limit. But at the end of the day, let's remember it is about people. There are few people like myself who will have reached my sort of age without being exposed to the consequences of this. I have, in the last 10 years, had 2 specific instances, not personal friends, just incidents I've come across. In France, someone came out of a side road and knocked a motorcyclist over. I was on the scene within 2 minutes. The 2 people, their necks were broken. They were both dead, young people. I had to go forward and check that they were dead, and they were. The drink could be smelt from a great distance away from that driver. I also, in Edinburgh, in the last 10 years, again at a junction, a man in a van coming forward, driving into the side of another vehicle. I had to hold that man's scalp back onto his head. He could not see, not just because of the drink, because of the injuries that he had. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and he'd taken drink. That is the sort of incident which drives home to anyone who's exposed to it the absolute need to engage in this issue.
1 minute,
please
please.
support the motion that Kenny McCaskill has tabled today, Presiding Officer.